Hi, welcome back. Sarah here. Here's a preview of what we're going to look at in this video. New decks and some current decks. Yeah, right? All right, let's get to it. So first, let's talk about these three decks. I went on a solo trip to New York City a couple of weeks ago. The main reason why I went there was to go to a stationery fest, and I bought a lot of great stuff. I saw a lot of great artists at stationery fests. Also, to just enjoy a solo trip. So I traveled without my spouse, without any other friends. I did go to see one friend and I stayed at their place, but besides that, I just enjoyed going into the city by myself every single day, just exploring the city, exploring their public transportation, which, is a lot better than what we have in California, and just enjoying looking at different shops around there. One destination, one highlight of my trip was going to the Drama Bookshop. I really wanted to hit up some independent bookstores in New York City. I just like seeing what indie bookstores have to offer. So the Drama Bookshop is themed around, as you can imagine, drama. So cinema, theater, TV, film, entertainment, screenplays even. And I work in entertainment. I work in TV, film. My sibling works in theater, so a little bit of a history of theater and TV in this family. I know this is the deck Diaries, not the book and everything else Diaries, so I'll just make this quick. I bought this book from there for myself. I am not really interested in acting. I have stage fright and I'm very self-conscious, but I still think this is fascinating. If you survive 7th grade, you can be an actor. I'm very curious about what the Meisner technique is and what getting out of my head in acting and in life might mean. And they also sold some tarot and oracle decks there. As you can imagine, the tarot and oracle decks are also themed around TV, film, and pop culture. So I decided to pick up this Britney Spears oracle deck. I really liked Britney Spears' music growing up, but I wasn't like a diehard fan. I just didn't have too much of a connection to her, but I did enjoy listening to her music. Not just her title tracks, but some songs from her albums as well. I know that she's been through hell and back with that whole conservatorship issue and everything, and I'm glad that she's finally free. This was published in 2022, Britney Brands Inc. So even though I wasn't much of a Britney fan, like a diehard fan growing up, I thought it would be interesting to learn more about what fans see in Britney and why she has made such an impact on pop culture. We have different archetypes, different eras that Britney has been throughout all the years, and just different things that she has, I guess, contributed to pop culture. I know I'm not explaining the deck super well, but you can kind of see the gist of the deck here. And while I was in shop, I did look up a few flip through videos before buying the deck, and a lot of comments did seem to be positive, and I thought that the deck was pretty respectable. I wonder if I can get in touch with my own younger girl self, even though I don't really identify as a girl or a woman now. It would just be interesting to identify or connect with these old archetypes. Maybe I'll relive my preteen years. Maybe I'll just appreciate them from afar. So yeah, that is the Britney Spears Oracle. Dang girl, the siren. So very interested in seeing what this deck has to offer for my readings. The other two decks I bought from a tarot shop in New York. Granted, when I go to tarot shops, I do tend to see a lot of the same mass market decks over and over. But these two, I have not seen in many tarot shops. This one, the Storyteller's Tarot by David de Pascal. When I looked up videos of this in the store 2 weeks ago, I could not find any videos. It just came out very recently, so I was very lucky to snag a copy in store. Buying decks in store is such a great feeling. And then the Loputyn Oracle, I heard about this from Quinn over at Lucid Moons. I know that this goes into the Wolf and the Maiden tropes, which I am not very knowledgeable about either. So I'm very curious to see, what kind of themes or just what this oracle has to say. I'm just very curious about it, basically. Okay, so a closer look at the Storyteller's Tarot. What's really cool about this artist, this creator, is he's an art director and a character designer in the animation industry. And it lists some of the studios that he's worked with. I find animators and character designers so cool because they really know how to make characters that are really alive, they just feel really alive, very dynamic and full of life and full of energy. So the cards in this deck are inspired by traditions, folk tales, myths, stories all around the world. I am not too knowledgeable about a lot of stories around the world, so I'm very excited to learn about all these different stories and folk tales and myths. we can see that there is just so much life and so much energy in these different cards. This Temperance card is very fascinating because I just see teeth, I see like meat. It is very different from a typical like angelic vibe of like a Temperance card that I'm used to seeing. The devil here is renamed to Vice. This looks like an Asian myth of some sort based on this hairstyle and this silhouette here. So the majors are relatively scenic, and the minors, they don't have many backgrounds, as my pal Imogen over at Sapling Tarot pointed out. It's like the artist just said, fuck backgrounds. So for the wand suit, we have the scepters. Cups suit, we have hearts. The sword suit, we have spikes. And for the pentacle suit, we have coins. And I just love the red on this. Oh, it feels so Asian. I really love that. All right, so quick flip through the suits here. All of the wands or the scepters, they seem to be based around constellations. And even within these constellations, like the characters just have like very vibrant, like not vibrant, like expressive facial expressions. I remember being confused about the centaur or who was depicted on the King of Wands here. So I looked it up. Here's an example from the guidebook. So we have the King of Scepters, and then we have the name of the character on it. So here is Centaurus. In the Queen of Scepters, for example, we had Cassiopeia. Here, Cassiopeia. So here, Centaurus. And then it explains here, the centaur embodies both the cunning and resilience of man and the swiftness and strength of a horse. Sagittarius is a creature. The prime embodiment of a centaur is perhaps the legendary Chiron. I guess this is just meant to be like a general centaur, as this little tagline says. So it explains a little bit about the myths here. So here's the myth of Chiron explained. And then it explains also some bit about the King of Wands. So when upright, this card indicates you're motivated to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves to you at this time. When appearing in reverse, this card can mean domination and arrogance are becoming defining qualities in your action. So that's a little preview of the guidebook there, right? So there's that. All right, quick flip through the hearts, the cup suit. I remember Imogen of Sapling Tarot was like, why the heck does the Five of Cups, why is it represented by the Trojan horse? So I looked it up in the guidebook as well, and what it shares here is almost comical to me, but I really like comical, so I'm not bothered by it. The Trojan horse, what it says here is, when this card appears upright, it seems like things aren't turning out the way that you expected them to. Regret, disappointment, and perhaps suffering are emotions you are feeling right now. So it's just almost kind of comical to say like, oh, things probably didn't turn out the way you expected. When the Trojan horse, like I imagine in reality, it would be such a devastating thing. But yes, that's the association for Five of Cups with the Trojan horse here. This is a really interesting Page of Cups. It's like, there's not even like a person here. Court cards are different from the Wands or the Scepters court cards. You know, these look almost like traditional courts where they are depicted by people, whereas these ones, they're not very obviously depicted by people. Like this could be an invisible person. Yeah, how fascinating. So this feels more like a theme than a court. Now moving to the spikes or the swords. Wow, that's cool. Okay, here's the court cards for the spikes or the swords. So the first two in the ranking seem to be like animals or creatures, and the second two are more people-y or more humanoid, really. All right. And now the pentacles or the coins. Like I mentioned, I really love the red background. I'm very curious if the suits are all themed around certain certain countries or certain big cultural groups. Like, I'm wondering if the coin suit is featuring more Asian myths than the other suits. All right. So that is a quick flip through of the Storyteller's Tarot. I know that this is a new deck out on the market, and I have not seen many videos of it. So I hope this gives you some information about the deck. Oh, well, before I put it away, let me shuffle it and pull some cards for this, right? So if you prefer your decks to be more cohesive, you would probably not like the look of this deck as much because, as you can see, all of the different suits are, they all look very different. The cardstock is relatively it's okay. It's not the super bendiest cardstock, but it's definitely not the worst either. I'd say it's average. The cards are pretty big compared to standard tarot size. Like, this is a standard size card, so we can see that this is definitely huge. Okay, let's see the overhand. All right. I have what I call piano fingers, even though I know piano is not genetic. But this is how it shuffles. Let's pull 3 cards. Lay them out. Okay, so this is what I was saying about how it might seem disjointed because of the different suits. Although, actually okay, whoa, back in frame here. Okay, actually the squares, the borders actually make it look more cohesive than I expected. All right, let's do 3 more. Oh, interesting. Look at this, how these two like frame this one here. The directionality in these cards is very apparent. Like, these two already look like they're in a battle and ignoring like whatever's going on in this card here. Okay, so you can clearly see when the majors appear because the majors are so much more scenic than the minors here. Interesting. I don't hate the look of this. I thought it would look pretty disjointed, you know, with the different suits looks, but I don't hate it, you know. The minors, even though they don't have backgrounds, they still look very vibrant and very lively, even next to the majors. This is really fascinating. Okay, I'm really liking these combos so far. Like I said, the directionality is really interesting. Like, we have characters that are facing certain ways, and their heads are facing one way, their body's facing another. They're looking in different like directions. I really, really like when tarot decks and card decks have strong directionality like this because it makes the flow of the energy, the flow of the reading, the energy of the reading. I don't know. It's just really animated, I feel, you know? So yeah, that's a look at the Storyteller's Tarot. I really like it. Do you like it? Are you going to pick it up? And maybe we should do a deck study together or something. Okay. And then the third deck that I bought is the Loputyn Oracle. Like I mentioned, Quinn over at Lucid Moon said that this is one of their favorite decks. This depicts the wolf and the maiden tropes, which I know very little about, so I'm here to learn. This guidebook has 4 languages. I was very surprised when I first flipped through and I was like, oh my god, wait, it's not in English? And I flipped back to the beginning and I was like, wait a minute, it is. Heads up before I show the cards, there is nudity in this deck and some imagery might be like slightly disturbing to you in like maybe a sexual way or kind of a gory way. I tend to be weak about gore and blood. Yeah, so that's a warning. That's a heads up. Okay, so looking at the cards here, the guidebook has numbers for each of the oracle cards and it seems to explain like what's happening in the card and it asks us questions and has journal prompts for us. The cards themselves, they don't have any titles on them. So it's really feeling more like an art deck here. Yeah, so shall I do a quick flip? I guess I will, huh? Something that Quinn of Lucid Moons mentioned that got me intrigued about this deck is explaining about how the wolf and the maiden is like a Sorry. Okay, I am forgetting what I meant to say. I guess when I briefly Googled it, and or from what they mentioned, they were explaining about how the wolf and the maiden are tropes that I guess we can tap into that appear in a lot of girls or girl experiences. I guess even though I can't recall like exactly what was said, the takeaway that I'm getting from it is that this can be a way to tap into, to reconnect with our own like primalness, our own like animal instincts, rather than the maiden trope, the maiden idea or image that we are expected to present to everybody else to seem palatable, to seem, you know, like appropriate, I guess. That's the best way I can put it for now. So very curious to see what this deck has to teach me, and what I can learn from it. So yeah, that's a look at the 3 decks that I bought in New York City. Another new deck that I have recently got this year really is the Oracle of 11 and the Tales of 11. So the Tales of 11 is a compilation of stories, myths and stories from the 11 Southeast Asian countries, which are Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. So we have this book, The Tales of 11, which compiles 4 stories from each of the 11 countries here. And then all of the stories from this book are also compiled into this oracle deck called the Oracle of 11. And when you buy this from Ambi Sun's website, you can buy the deck separately from the book. So the Oracle deck comes with its own guidebook here. Ambi Sun is also the creator of the Muse Tarot, which I know went mass market pretty recently. My sibling has that deck. It's an animal deck with dark backgrounds and like really beautifully drawn animals on the deck. So let's look at like an example here of these stories and this deck. So the origin of the buffalo, for example, 161. Of course, I'm going to choose a Vietnamese story, right? By the way, I love the font size here. It just feels so readable. It's so spacious and very readable. So we have the story here. We have a full color drawing or full color illustration of the card here. And then if we find the card in this deck here, we have the irresponsible genie. Spoiler alert, the origin of the buffalo in Vietnamese lore is that the buffalo was basically, well, here, an irresponsible genie. And the keywords here are laziness, cutting corners, and atonement. Some of these keywords are pretty shadowy. Like normally buffaloes are associated with like being hardworking and being disciplined and all that stuff. But here we have like laziness, cutting corners, and atonement. Right off the bat, I can already see that this is like not just a nice deck. Like there are some seriously like some kind of brutal cards here. Here's another like card that I thought was so metal. Downfall of the Danag, and it's something like a succubus of some sort. And we have transformation, undoing, succumb. We have like these bars here, but behind it, the Danag or the succubus creature is like sucking on flesh. Oh my god. So it's really, really cool that there are so many stories from all these different countries that I never really get to hear stories from. You know, it's in a whole beautiful storybook here to read about. This deck also comes with a little bit of a guidebook. Let's look at the guidebook here for the irresponsible genie. So the story it mentions here is the origin of the buffalo, and then it shows the keywords here. The whole story is summarized here. This card symbolizes the consequences of impulsive actions and the importance of executing a plan with care and effort. Avoid recklessness and take responsibility for your mistakes by learning from them and making amends. By doing so, we can create harmony and rectify missteps in our lives. I think it's a pretty succinct and efficient guidebook. It explains the story, it explains simple messages from each card, and a little bit of like advice and reminders here. And this separate storybook really enhances the experience of this deck. My priority is to read all of the stories. I just really want to learn and get to know all of these stories in this beautiful book. And then after having read all like 44 of these stories, like then I will kind of start working with the deck that way as well. But I have been enjoying reading these stories. I brought this with me on my plane trip to New York, so I enjoyed reading like the first 8 stories so far, and it's just really cool. This really takes me back to my childhood days of loving reading stories and learning about myths and legends. I'm really happy that this exists and that I get to experience this in my life and share this with all my pals and with you here today. Related to the Tales in the Oracle of 11, the Southeast Asian myths and stories, I want to talk about none other than the Southeast Asian Myths and Stories Tarot deck, otherwise known as the Muse Tarot. So this is a deck that has been sitting on the shelf for honestly like a long time. I know that I will work with this deck more eventually whenever I get around to it, but I at least started reading the guidebook as well. Similar to the Tales of 11 storybook, where I want to read all of the stories and just get to know them more, I figured like it would be fun to read about these stories from the Muse Tarot. So I've downloaded the PDF guidebook onto my Kindle here. I am struggling with the absolutely tiny font though. I understand that this is part of like just the Kindle screen being very tiny, and unfortunately I cannot zoom in on a Kindle as far as I know. I am noticing so far in the like 3-4 cards that I've read that the length of the stories on each card can differ, which is to be expected because it is a collaborative deck. I do wish that maybe there could have been a little bit more proofreading or copy editing before compiling all of the stories into this guidebook here. Like, for example, this is the High Priestess's story. Like, it's 3 columns here. And then for the Empress story, we have like 1 and a 4th column. And then for the Emperor, we have like 2 full columns. There's just not much consistency between each one, which, I mean, maybe it isn't a big deal either, because maybe some stories or cards just have more to say than others. I've got other minor points of frustration for proofreading or copy editing, but I don't think it's worth going into them too much because, like, I think a lot of these artists or these writers, English either isn't their first language and or they're not in a country where there's a lot of English, so it's pretty readable and I got the gist of the stories, even if there are like minor typos or a little bit of confusion here and there. So I've been kind of generally reading the Muse Tarot guidebook is the summary of this part here. Now moving on to some current decks that I've been using. So I finally started cracking open the Spectrowhirl Tarot and literally just started giving it a shot. This is what the box looks like. It's a tuck flap box, and I've opened and closed this so many times. It's starting to wear down, but I don't mind it for now. This deck was on my like decks to deep dive list last year, back in like November, December. I finally got around to starting using this because I figured like I'm already doing one deck study. If I wait to do a deck study like every single time, it's going to take me a long time before I get to some of these decks, right? I decided to just crack this open, just start doing readings with it, just flinging down some cards, and I've been having a really great time. Sometimes I feel like pouring over all of the details. Sometimes I just enjoy having the cards out and just looking at them surface level, and that's okay. Not every deck needs to be a whole experience. Not every reading has to be a whole deep experience. Sometimes we just feel like throwing down some cards and just seeing the pretty pictures, right? Like, who cares? We're all just having fun. Sometimes it goes deep, sometimes it doesn't, right? The guidebook for this deck is also really helpful in times when I feel a little bit overwhelmed by the whole imagery. The guidebook will actually explain like what the card is actually depicting, and it just really helps clarify my focus on the cards that way. For example, here, the Knight of Wands. At first glance, it just seems like a whole smattering of color, right? This excerpt here describes the Knight of Wands as a bulky scepter with a burning core lights the torches of the castle walls and ignites the sky. An enthusiastic force unhindered by doubt. So a bulky scepter with a burning core, very fiery heart, fiery gut instinct, lights the torches of the castle, inspiring others, giving passion to others, or giving energy to the things that are important, and ignites the sky, so just being radiant. So even the description already helps me understand more about not only what to look for in this painting, but also what to remember about the Knight of Wands in general. All right, here's another example, the King of Swords. Right, so looking at this image just seems like a lot going on. But now here we have a mighty broadsword is jutting from the surface of a colossal planet. The base of the blade contains its own celestial clock. Jutting from the surface of a colossal planet, maybe standing tall in what you believe in, or standing grounded, being rooted. The base of the blade contains its own celestial clock. I'm not 100% clear on what a celestial clock is, but I can at least see the connection here between like these spirals on the sides, maybe on the limbs and on the body here. The King of Swords represents an unfaltering icon of truth, authority, and order. It also indicates intellectual or scientific achievements. Though the king exemplifies a steadfast moral code and integrity, there's also an implication of strict law and punishment. That's what I was getting with the standing tall on a planet earlier, like steadfast moral code and integrity. So that's how some of the excerpts from the guidebook are. This is how the cards look. And like I said, it's just a very, very stimulating, very fun deck to work with. Like you just throw down some cards, right? And just enjoy looking at all the pretty colors, working with each other, really. I mean, they're all just combined, really. This is a deck that definitely I really enjoy having more in person than on camera because it's just easier to look at one card at a time and just really focus on it. I just don't get distracted by everything else when I'm looking at one card here. Versus when you're looking at it on camera, of course, it's like, oh my God, where can my eyes go? Like I'm looking at everything here. So definitely this deck needs to be experienced in person and not just on camera. This creator also came out with the Spectrowhirl Oracle. I told myself I don't need it because I just don't need like another system that I'm going to take time to learn. But the art in it is just so cool. So maybe the Spectrowhirl Oracle will be a deck that I just have for the collectible reason, even though like I already have 78 really cool paintings here. So I don't know, man. I don't know. But for the time being, I'll just continue working with this and enjoying this, right? Another deck I've been using has been the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. This one I'm not as in love with as the Spectrowhirl Tarot. I'm just ready to let this one go. This one doesn't inspire me. The art hasn't grown on me, and I don't feel inspired. You know, I did recently feature this in a Top Tarot Trumps video for the Chariot, but besides that, the art in general doesn't really inspire me. I had bought this deck secondhand because I was buying other decks from that person selling online. I don't feel bad about this. You know, I gave it a shot. I'm gonna sell it online somewhere else so someone else can enjoy it. Yeah, I've tried doing readings with this and they're okay, but I just find myself feeling disinterested. I don't feel invested in the paintings, the images here, the art here. I feel like I could continue to try to force myself to like this deck. I could put it away for use at a later time, or I can just kind of throw in the towel and acknowledge like there's other decks that I am more excited about, that I enjoy more, that I feel more heart connected with. So I really don't need to spend more time and energy like trying to work with a deck that just doesn't excite me. So this is my brief stint with the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. It was okay while it lasted. Another deck I am not feeling great about is the Sacred Destiny Oracle. Okay, this one I bought in a tarot shop like many months ago. I just thought it was really, really pretty. It looks like what I imagine a typical tarot reader has as a deck or as an oracle deck. Like, it's just really pretty. And I know that a lot of people will be like, oh, you shouldn't just have a deck because it's pretty. Well, why can't I? It's okay to have whatever you want to have. Who cares? It's your money, it's your space, right? But it's just falling flat for me. Like, I pull a card and it's aesthetically really pleasing, but it's similar to the Everyday Enchantment. Like, the images just are not doing much for me. Going forward, it just almost feels like I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be seeing this on like a propaganda poster. Oh man, is that bad to say? You know, this just reminds me of how like I'm not like a very woo person, and it's just very nice to look at, but for actual readings I'm just not feeling anything. Here's an example of a deck that I do feel something with though. The Poesis Oracle by Andrea Wan, and the art poetry by Megan King, designed by Aaron Dawkins. Hands down, the Poesis Oracle has just been my ultimate oracle deck. Dude, here it is. Okay, we have Transform, and we have art of someone like almost becoming or being one with a butterfly here. We have Explore, and then we have like these visuals of someone exploring through a path, like mushrooms, which tend to be normally very small. They're suddenly very big. We have a random lip with a tongue like out licking the path for some reason. We have like so much more evocative images on these cards. Fear. This is so eerie. I love this. So these images just feel so much more evocative to me than these images here. You know, both have their audiences and their different uses. But when I get this card, trust, my brain connections are not really working. Not much is working for me here, you know? Like there's not much to dive into in this deck for me. This is one of those decks where looking through it, I really want to keep it. I want to have it. But if it were on the shelf, I know that I would not actively pull it out to do readings with, because there are other decks that I would definitely use a lot more. Poesis Oracle, for example. Another example is the Messages from the Spirits of Nature Oracle. I might as well get that one too while I'm mentioning it. We have Messages from the Spirits of Nature. This one is doing what I thought Sacred Destiny was going to do. There is not only the keyword of what this item, this thing is, but there's also a keyword for what it can mean. So we have oak tree, and then, you know, picture of an oak tree, and then ancestor. So there's actual meaning, and there's a keyword that I can actually like dive into and explore and ponder. And there's also like an actual like nature-y thing that it's tied into that I can actually like analyze and draw themes from, you know, like, I don't know. Okay, seeing these side by side, I feel like I would just reach for this one anytime I would want to reach for this one, because this one does such a better job. But again, looking at this visually, I don't want to let this go yet. So this will be on the shelf for a little bit longer. Yeah. So that was my take on the Sacred Destiny Oracle. I guess one more thing I'll mention about the Poesis while I have it in my hands is that it is so nice to do card spreads with. Because these are standard tarot card size, it's cool to do readings with it. It's just like you would with a tarot deck. And it's also really cool to pair this with any tarot deck too. So adding any card, you know, like having a tarot deck on top or on the bottom and having oracle cards next to it, it just works so much better with my tarot decks than these like bigger decks do. I'll quickly mention the Modern Goddess Tarot as a new deck that I'm starting to work with. I recently got this back from a friend who had borrowed it from me for a very long time. This one has a lot of similarities to the Rider-Waite-Smith images, but I'm really loving the colorful art here. It's just a lot of fun. Looks like a lot of fun. In the middle of using some decks like this, that can be a little bit challenging. I think it can also be nice to just have decks like this that are just more light and fun and a bit easier to read. The major arcana of these cards and the court cards are themed around different goddesses. So like for the moon, we have probably Artemis. It's always Artemis. Yeah. So the moon is Artemis here. We have like an explanation of what the moon means and also like why Artemis is on here. Artemis is the manifestation of sisterhood, the freedom of the woman, the wild self. Then there's some questions here as well. Like for example, where does the magic in your life reside? In what way are you able to change? What must you observe under a new light? The court cards are all themed around like the same person in each suit. So for the Page of Cups, this is Yemaya, the Yoruba goddess of water, as a child. And then in the Knight of Cups, we'll have Yoruba as like the overflowing river. And then the Queen of Cups and the Crone of Cups, we have Yoruba, Yemaya as well. So that's how like the characters in this Modern Goddess Tarot are. The rest of the cards are just nameless people. So yeah. So new deck I've been working with. I'm enjoying it. It's nice, easy read and very colorful, very pleasant to look at. I'll also quickly mention the Muse Tarot deck study I've been working on. I did a video about this some time ago as well. This is the cards I finished. These are the cards I still have left to do. We're getting there. We're almost done. We're almost done. Here's the pages of the latest study. So I finished yet another page. I'm starting another page. What I've been doing with this deck study, in case you are new to that, I've just been pulling a card and literally just writing down what I notice about the symbolism and the vibes of the card. So for example, with the 9 of Emotions, I just pulled a card. I noted how this figure was suspended in the air, perhaps representing feeling freer and self-sufficient. The crystal teardrops and the bars or the lines around them can symbolize like protection, like feeling protected against like unwanted things outside of this, I don't know, this something. The water flowing here can represent like flowing, fluidity, being in the flow. We have a genie lamp down here, which can represent wishes. We have rocks in the water, which can represent difficulties. And this character, this figure, is rising above these difficulties. During a study session, I might pull up to 3 or 4 cards, depending on how many I feel. Sometimes I only pull 1, and that's okay too. So this has been going on since May. So May till now, it's been like at least 3 months, and it's just been enjoyable, you know? Like I only do this when I feel like it. There's no pressure to do all the cards. Even if I end up not finishing it, like that's okay too. You know, I got a lot of value from all these cards being studied as it was. So yeah, that's my Muse Tarot deck study. We're almost at the finish line, folks. Almost there. And the last deck that I'll mention comes with a little bit of a story. The I'm Here Oracle, which is by Murphy Pines. Fun fact, I surprisingly met Murphy at a queer reading rainbow event at the library, at one of the libraries around Los Angeles. It was very unexpected. I saw them and I was like, oh, is that Murphy? Oh my God. And my friend who was there was like, hey, are you Murphy Pines? And I was like, oh my God, you're so direct about it. But my friend had a point. I had to stop dancing around and just straight up ask them. So Murphy was like, oh yeah, I am. And I was like, oh my God, I really like your work. I love your deck and I'm very happy to have it. And so I just had conversations with Murphy like the rest of the event. I invited them to our subsequent tarot meetups. So I've met them a couple times now at our tarot meetups with my other Asian tarot friends. It's been a bit surreal to know that like someone whose deck that I have and someone who I've only known of like from afar, I now get to meet in person and just get to know as a person. You know, it's pretty cool how like life works, right? We're all people at the end of the day. At the past couple of meetups, we've talked about Murphy's deck and like Murphy has shared like about how they've been able to get their deck in Skylight Books, which is a pretty big independent bookstore in Los Angeles. They were able to share like just more of the process of their deck, and I just got to share about their deck more with the people in my local Asian tarot group. So yeah, so cool, dude. I know someone who created a deck. Wow, how cool, right? Yeah, so this deck, we've used it a little bit at our past meetups as well. I used this to demonstrate what Oracle decks can be like, and how people can use Oracle decks to read as like card spreads, you know, as like 3 card spreads like this, or you can just read them as like a single card answer for the day or for your question. I was able to tell Murphy in person as well, like how much I really appreciate decks like this that just show figures as genderless, shapeless blobs. I don't know, man, these blobs just make me feel more seen and less perceived. Maybe other neurodivergent people can understand and relate to that. And I got it signed. All this for me. What is great about this guidebook as well is like it goes into detail about like the card, and there's journaling and action prompts. So Murphy really put a lot of love in this deck. I know that there was a whole thing with the Kickstarter that they ran. I'm not concerned about that anymore because the deck is in my hands and I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the deck. I hope that if you like this deck, if you can get your hands on it, if this is something that you could benefit from, the emotional care in this deck, I hope that you can support a local queer Asian artist. I mean, local to me, really. You know, a small queer Asian artist, and try the deck out for yourself. That's the last deck I got for now. Whew, now for the final deck stack of the video. Oh my God, I know. I hope that you enjoyed like hanging out with me as I babbled for like over an hour, and I'm gonna figure out how to edit this down later. Yeah, I know. Whatever, dude. Oh my God. Okay, whatever. So that's all the decks that I've been using and some extra decks that I've compared them to as well. Let me know if you've used any of these decks, if you have opinions on any of them, if you want to see more videos on any of these specifically somehow that I could provide for you. Besides that, that is all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.